and welcome to Esoteric History's very first video. And today we will be solving the mystery of the nubs on the megalithic structures worldwide. As we have seen, this weird geopolymer-looking design on megalithic structures from Peru all the way to Egypt have these weird nubs on their outer-facing walls, the bricks. And it's one of the defining features of the architecture in Peru. And a lot of people have looked at them and they're like, oh yeah, that's granite. Oh, it's got to be granite. And they look at it and they don't know what they're looking at. And but I'm going to tell you today exactly how these things were built. And you're going to want to sit down, get you some popcorn, maybe some coffee, because we're doing a deep dive today. You may not like what I'm about to say about how these structures were built, because it might take some of the mystery away from their construction, but I am presenting the most logical explanation as to why these stones have such strange shapes, and more specifically, nubs. You see, these stones weigh thousands of pounds. So logically, if we're to look at how they would move these structures, here's how it was done. You see, these stones have these nubs, and you put your hands on them. This is what the ancients did. They put their hands on them, and they kind of squeezed them like a nice pair of titties. They would squeeze them, and it would magically raise them up with the power. It would manifest the power in their mind, and they would raise it up into the sky, and then they would place it where they wanted it to be seated on the wall. You see, this is the most logical explanation. Of course, these nubs would also give them power. The power of manifesting power. Power to cut rocks, to form them. All they had to do is squeeze the nubs. Squeeze them. Just very gently. Just be gentle, and they would move, and it would fly up in the air and set right down where they wanted them to. Not only could these ancients manifest this power by squeezing these nubs, but also when they squeezed the nubs, they would also get healing powers. It would heal them, and they would also get superhuman strength. This is like something you've never seen before. This is the most logical explanation, because how else are they going to move stones that are thousands and thousands of pounds? They're not. They're just simply not. This is the most logical explanation. Well, what I just described is one of the more mainstream ideas on how these stone blocks were moved or formed. But what I want to get into is how it was actually formed. So hold on. What you'll notice on most of these stones is that the nubs are on the lower portion. This is very significant. So this is what you're looking at, a geopolymer, a type of concrete. And the reason why they're so close together is because they are poured right on top of each other. And these stones would have these bags around them originally during construction. And they could fill those bags up with concrete or whatever geopolymer that they were using. And they didn't have to be very specific, as you can see on the wall constructions. Nothing's equal. They did this because it was easier and faster to do with concrete. And those nubs are where they would stab the bag that encased the concrete. And if there was too much in there, that concrete, they could let some of it out and level it out with the rest of the stones, well, geopolymer concrete, that they had already poured there. This is the most logical explanation. Now we know that not only in Peru, but in the Sage Wall in Montana also has these nubs. And the Sage Wall kind of looks like concrete when you look at it. And then you can go all the way to Egypt and see the nubs on the pyramid of Mycerinus. Near the entrance, you'll see these nubs on the outer casing. So, or what's left of it then at the bottom, around the entrance on the pyramid of Mycerinus. This is very significant. And you can see that it's been smoothed out in areas. Well, how are they going to smooth it out? The most likely explanation is that they smooth it out while the geopolymer was still wet. It makes way more sense to do it this way than to fast travel these granite blocks miles and miles from a quarry. You see, we don't know what kind of concrete they were using back then. They could have been using a type of concrete that used a powder granite or that has that type of substance in it. We honestly don't know. There's so much of this mineral substance around that when they put the hardener inside of the concrete, it's going to be just like the granite. But this, we don't know. But honestly, this is the easiest way to build a pyramid or a wall like this. It is the easiest way. So if you have a bag that you're pouring concrete in on top of other blocks that you've already made, you're going to have a very close connection where you couldn't even put a human hair through it. And the reason why is it depends on how you make your bag or your reed structure. It's going to be a temporary structure that holds the concrete while you pour it. And that's why everything's so close together. And once it's done hardening, you can rip that stuff off or you can let it rot away. Now, if you look at some of the structures in Peru, you can see evidence where there's striations in these stone blocks, or concrete blocks is more likely what they are. You can see the striations in the wall where someone has gone and rubbed it while it's still wet. This is huge. This is key into understanding how they made these walls. Now, you may be asking for a source on this. Well, the evidence presents itself plainly when you look at it. The evidence is clear that there was a worldwide civilization that existed sometime in the distant past, and somehow it ceased to exist, which gives evidence to some sort of worldwide cataclysmic event which wiped them out. Because we can clearly see that Montana, Egypt, and Peru had the exact same nub, blob-style architectural design. It's clear as day. You can deny it all you want, but it's there. And you can lie to yourself and say, oh, well, that's not real. That's not real. I'm just going to believe my peers, have it peer-reviewed by other people who don't believe it. Well, you can be that way, but you'll look ridiculous. So I hope you learned something today, and maybe give you a little idea on how these walls were made, a more logical, down-to-earth explanation. And I hope you like and subscribe, and hopefully leave a comment below if you're angry. But please, please, don't leave a negative comment.